What is up, Baylor fans? This is Cole Barber of Sikkim 365 coming to you really, really fast after Baylor's 48-45 victory over SMU, number 17 ranked SMU in double overtime. And man, this is my first time recording one of these rapid reactions. Obviously, Craig Smoke did it for last year. Grayson had the Auburn game in week one. We're rotating on these, and I don't know if this is just good luck for me or what, because I was not looking forward to recording this really about 30 minutes ago. It did not look very good, but Baylor's defense really brought it at the end of that game. Obviously, the overtime touchdown notwithstanding, but gave the offense, which had been prolific throughout the course of the game, an opportunity to go down, tie it up, and a lot of reactions from this game, a lot of scary moments. We don't really know what's going on with Michael Trigg at tight end, missing the second half. Hopefully we'll have some information on that soon as I'm recording this, so we do not have any information. But after Baylor got shut out in the first quarter of this game, scored 48 points in the final three quarters, 10 points there in overtime. And honestly, if this wasn't for about 3 to 4 fluky plays, this is a game that Baylor controls, and it started at the very beginning. And that doesn't mean that everything was perfect. It doesn't mean that the defense can't improve. It doesn't mean that there's not some reason to be concerned about the rushing game, which I thought SMU just basically took that away from the beginning. They weren't going to let Baylor run the football, but Baylor just grinded it out as they could, and it paid off late. But in general, I thought that Baylor played a game that they should not have won outside of the offensive side of the ball in spots, but they did. And I didn't expect this outcome when Baylor went down 14 points. That was an opportunity for them to fold, and they didn't. And you have the block in the back punt by LeVar Thornton. That just a fluke play, ball going a little left or a little right, really set that. That particular play really set things up for Baylor to lose that game, and it did not look good. And then you get Bryson Washington's fumble, and then it's just like, man, here we go. Here it's downhill from here. But this team kept chipping away. It kept chipping away. And we can talk about stats, and we can talk about what the defense did, which in general, 459 yards to SMU is not terrible. They did a decent job on the run defense. SMU threw for 296, rushed for 163. A lot of that late, as Baylor really started kind of getting beat up. DK Kalu went out. We don't really know his status. I didn't see him out there a ton in the second half. But anyways, just this conglomerate of, holy crap, there's no way that Baylor's going to be able to pull this one off. And it started with the first play of the game, and it just felt like Baylor played from the 8 ball from the very beginning. And that very easily, LeVar Thornton's missed interception could have very easily flipped the momentum the other way, but this put Baylor in a really, really tough spot. And really, there's a lot of takeaways, and there's a lot of things, like I said, to be worried about. But I salute this team. You have to salute this team for keep fighting. And they've battled a lot of adversity, believe it or not, early in the season with the injuries they faced. And if you talk about Carl Williams not being out there for the first game because of injury in fall camp, Jackie Marshall, Michael Trigg now in this game, DK Kalu, Devontae DeZeno battling it. It just seems like everything's kind of piled up on them. And for them to come out and get this come-from-behind victory was absolutely massive for this team, and I'm really thrilled. So that's the general overview. I want to get into some nuts and bolts of this, and I think we will start on the defensive side of the ball. Baylor, 61 tackles. This is just straight off the box score. 61 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. I thought was a good number. Kevin Jennings is really hard to sack at times, negative 16 yards. 1 interception. Jacob Redding coming up big with that interception. Not that I didn't expect that from him, but he played that play perfectly against a really good tight end in that Hibner for SMU. You watch him on tape, and he is a mismatch, and Redding to match up in that situation was really impressive. The one turnover was obviously huge because it flipped the momentum back. And you talk about the momentum's plays against Baylor. That was a momentum play for Baylor. Really, really encouraged to see that. Then you look at SMU rushing 44 times for 163 yards. Average per rush, 3.7. And after what we saw against Auburn last week, you take this all day long. SMU got some carries late. They had the long run, 40 yards run late by TJ Harden that really inflated that number. And obviously some of the sacks took away from this number. College football does it weird with the tackles, the sacks not counting towards passing numbers, but counting towards the rushing numbers. And but yeah, 186 gain, 23 loss. And then in the passing game, 296, but roughly, I don't know what the exact total was. I'll look at it here in a minute, but roughly half of that between two pass attempts. The one to open the game and the one later on where Baylor had a bust in coverage. Carl Williams actually playing deep safety in that situation, bid on a not a double move, but in a scramble mode. And Jalen Cooper from SMU got over the top of him and scored a long touchdown. But in general, I'm not saying Baylor played great pass defense. There's something to work with there. And obviously then the overtime play on LeVar Thornton has a chance to tip the ball. And that's the guy you want in that situation, to tip the ball against Romello Brinson. LeVar's long. And you even saw that when it was set up. Devin Bobby pointed out, I don't know the intentionality of pointing out the one-on-one coverage. Maybe he was saying, hey, I'm not helping you. I'm not playing over the top of you, so you have to play one-on-one. And LeVar's serviceable. He didn't make the play, but that was a great throw and catch in overtime. And that's truly how I felt about what Baylor allowed for SMU throughout this entire game. Was just solid defense, explosive play. Kind of opposite of what we saw last week. And Baylor heated up quite a few times with the pass rush and only got there twice, but I think made Kevin Jennings feel a little uncomfortable. But in general, 459 yards, 3.7 yards per rush. This insane stat, 17.4 yards per completion for Jennings for SMU. That's obviously not a great number. 296 total yards, 23 attempts, and yards after catch 93. But I'm leaving that game with the understanding like this defense, one, has to get healthy. Two, they have to be able to overcome their deficiencies. And in this game, in the spots, they made their plays. And it sucks. It is what it is for the defensive side of the ball right now. I don't know how much growth this team's going to have if guys aren't getting healthy and they have more guys that are falling off and getting injured. Obviously, Caden Jenkins not making the trip at cornerback. I don't know how costly that was for them. Tevin Williams got flagged for a PI late that I didn't necessarily agree with. I thought he played the ball well. We've seen a lot more go than that. But in general, I thought this is 2 weeks in a row that they've matched up fairly well. And if you don't equate those busts and what I'll call busts, LeVar Thornton, you undercut that route, you better make the play. You better get that ball on the ground. And obviously he was close but didn't do it, and they score. And then they bust by Carl Williams, back in action, first game of the season, and playing deep safety, which I was excited to see. But outside of those two plays, I thought they did fairly well. And obviously the advanced analytics will come out. We'll see how many pressures they got, how many times they pushed Jennings outside of the pocket and get a little uncomfortable. But he does a good job in those situations too. This was not an easy matchup. You felt like Baylor had the advantage because of the experience at receiver that SMU did not have. I thought SMU did a pretty good job in a lot of ways, but you also saw the inconsistencies. And Baylor has to get better. They're going to face a lot of teams that can throw and throw it the way that SMU did, and that was their in this game. I thought that was potentially the way, not their running game, but that was potentially the way that they were going to win this game, was throwing the football. And that was the X factor, I guess I should say. And it almost cost Baylor on a couple of those plays that let the game get away. Obviously, Baylor ends up coming back. But flipping to Baylor's offensive side of the ball, I mean, what else can you really say? SMU, we're texting about this on our staff, Sigum 365 staff group thread, and we're talking Baylor can't run the ball, and they couldn't. And then you start looking at the numbers, though. Baylor was Jake Spavital was pretty stubborn early in this game. He was pretty stubborn running against heavy boxes in situations they didn't need to. Let's raise more speculation about Sawyer Robertson not using his legs. I think that we saw him run a couple more times, a couple design runs. I don't know if those answer questions about injury situations with him, but we're told he's healthy. But this offense, as it got going, it is really difficult to cover. And that's not to talk about Michael Trigg's injury and what that could be for the rest of the season. Really, really frustrating if that's an extended injury, season ending. We don't know, but he was out for the second half. We'll hopefully get some more information here pretty soon. At the time of recording this, I don't know. Recorded it pretty quick after the game. But this is an offense that creates mismatches, and I'm excited to see this offense progress as teams realize we can't just take away the run. And because SMU, that's what they did. They sold out to do this, and Baylor wore them down enough to make the running game efficient late. And that's what you have to point to, because Baylor's running against, they're outweighed in the box the majority of the night when they're running these plays. Bryson Washington was literally his own blocker a lot of times. And the way the offense is designed, they typically don't run into abnormal numbers. And they did a lot in this game because they needed SMU to, one, wear down, and which is ultimately, in my mind, the reason they won this game, because Bryson Washington got big runs late, but it opens up so much in the pass game. And so Baylor finishes 601 total yards, 161 net rushing yards, which ultimately was not a bad day. 44 rush attempts, 3.7 yards per attempt, 2 rushing touchdowns, gained 175, lost 14. SMU, let's look over here. SMU had 1 sack. And that was my biggest area of concern against this SMU front, was they had some dudes on the edge that could rush the passer. 1 sack was pretty good number for this particular game. SMU did force 2 turnovers against Baylor, 1 not on the offense, 1 on the offense with Bryson Washington's fumble, which was one of those weird plays of, dude, just hold on to the ball. Yes, you want to get extra yards, but at this point, what are you fighting for? And it cost them. Obviously a close play, but it did cost them and made that game much more difficult, more than it should have. But Sawyer Robertson, final completions, 34-50, 68% completion passing, net passing yards, 440, average per completion, 12.9. And then this is the number that just pops out to me again, 176 yards after catch. So 34 receptions. On those 34 receptions, 176 yards after catch. That's incredible. That's an incredible number. I don't know where that ranks. I don't know where it is, but Baylor, once again, like they did against Auburn, they get into windows and they catch and run. And that's Sawyer Robertson being accurate is a big part of that, but these receivers are also very athletic. And that's without Cole Wilson doing a ton. About to go over individual stats, but 11 rushing first downs, 18 passing first downs, 3 by penalty, total plays 94-67 for SMU. That was ultimately the difference. And I think truly SMU ended up with 44 rushing attempts, but Baylor being willing to commit to that early was a big part of that. Obviously, they had the big explosive plays for SMU, and they did not allow their defense much time to rest, and Baylor more opportunities to run more plays. And the game plans were kind of maligned in the way that they ended up winning going by the end of the game. But yeah, 44 rushing plays to 50 pass, very balanced at the end of the day. And ultimately, and I'm going to go over these individual stats here once I pull them up, but Bryson Washington, not a great yards per carry day. But listen to these numbers: 31 attempts, 115 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3.7 yard average. And it's like I said, that's not a great day, but considering what they were running into in the front beginning at the game, what they were trying to do, that's a really, to me, a solid number. And you get frustrated with it early on, but then by the end of the game, it's playing dividends. If you eliminate mental mistakes, fluke plays, that set Baylor up in late game situation to be down 14, you look back at this running game and you say, hey, that ended up being a decent day against a team that sold out to stop the run. And obviously we have to look at film, we have to do those things, but that was very, in my mind, the way that they continued to run the football was a big part of this game, because SMU just couldn't ignore the run. And I think at times Auburn could ignore the run. But I'm anxious to watch the film to see how that held up. Ashton Hawkins, really scary moment. Broken collarbone, the way he landed on his neck. What was the issue? He goes off the field, and then he's immediately back on. 10 receptions, 145 yards, no touchdowns, yards after catch 70. Just a guy that's just making plays in space right now. Josh Cameron, everybody talked about where's Josh Cameron last week against Auburn. Well, 9 catches, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, 16.8 yard per average, yards after catch, 44. Then the kind of the unsung hero of this game, and through 2 games, he's getting looks. It's Kobe Prentice, 3 touchdowns in 2 games, 2 touchdowns in this game, a big one late, really across the middle from Sawyer Robertson. No Michael Trigg, he steps into that slot and makes a big play. And that was, 1, an incredible throw by Sawyer Robertson. 2, Kobe Prentice just, it takes guts to go over the middle, and he knew that he was going to take a shot. And not only did he take the shot, he caught the ball and scored a touchdown. Bryson Washington, 3 receptions. Cole Wilson, only 2 receptions for 21 yards. Obviously, that was a big part of the game for SMU, was taking away the deep shot. A lot of Baylor's damage was done in intermediate windows. Did have some big shots, deep shots, but not as regular as what we saw against Auburn. That was SMU's game plan. Stop the run, take away the deep pass, make Sawyer Robertson beat them up and down the field, and that's what he did. I was really, really pleased with that. Running through these stats here defensively, Baylor, Keaton Thomas, 10 more sacks. A lot of concern in my mind of why he's not in the game in so many spots. I don't know what's going on there. We might get some information, but 10 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. And then the next performance that really stood out to me, and this was a guy that we've talked a lot about in the offseason, but Amarian Winston had some big plays late. And I don't know where the numbers came. I know he had 2 tackles for loss and 1 sack, but he was kind of everywhere at the end of the game. Kind of like when Baylor decided, hey, let's be uber aggressive when they had that chance to, when they weren't giving up big plays down the field. Let's let that front 7 be aggressive. He ended up with 4 tackles, 3 of those solo, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. Baylor ended up with 2 sacks on the day. The other one coming from Travion Barnes, which was a big play in the moment. But yeah, that's kind of Baylor's stats, and only so much you can take away from that, but I think adding context to those was important. But in general, man, you just like this game was lost. And that's my biggest takeaway. Like, the feeling that you have in those moments of this game is lost because of just one fluky stuff. Like, I don't want to just point it all on that, but the first play of the game, it felt like that. And that feeling continued throughout the game. And then when you get a big stop and you have a block in the back that turns into the guy running into the Josh Cameron and the ball grazing his leg and SMU recovering, everything just seemed like it was just, I don't know. That was really difficult in those moments. And as I said at the top of this podcast, like, you don't feel good about things from this game, but the fact that Baylor won this gives them a little extra juice going into Samford and then going into Arizona State. Next week, fully expect a lot of guys to rest. Jackie Marshall played a little bit today. I don't know what his snap count was. He's going to rest next week. I would undoubtedly believe that he's going to rest. Carl Williams might be a guy that needs to play some more, but he could be another guy that needs rest and get ready for Arizona State. Really hopeful and not optimistic is not the right word because I don't know, but Michael Trigg needs to obviously we don't know what's going on with him. We might have information of what's going on with him from Dave Aranda's press conference, but really, really tough to see if he's not out there. Baylor has plenty of offensive weapons, but he's a massive mismatch. But what we know about this team, they're not going to quit. We know the offense is really good. The defense has to become opportunistic defense. And I was really, between the Auburn game and the SMU game, I wanted to see what this defense looked like after facing Auburn. A really good offensive line, a really good running quarterback, and I thought this team adjusted well. The issues today were in coverage, and then they had the one explosive 40-yard run by the Harden, the running back from UCLA that transferred into SMU. They had that one that felt like it put the game away. SMU has to be absolutely deflated from this game. Like, I can't imagine the emotions, the range of emotion, but they have to also give credit to Baylor because Sawyer Robertson picked their defense apart. And what was outside of their edge position, their defensive back room was the most experienced part of their team, and they got picked on the entire day. I was really, really impressed again with Sawyer Robertson, and he finished through 2 games now, 61 of 98. 859 yards, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. That is terrific. I mean, like, you're going to put those numbers up against anybody in the country right now. Best 2-game stretch, and I don't know how long for a Baylor quarterback, and he has plenty of weapons. This offense is going to go, and I'm excited to see them when everything starts. I don't think it's all clicked yet either. I think there's still some of this, feeling the way the running game's going. Sean Tompkins starts at left tackle to begin the second half instead of Sidney Fugar. That's really, what was the message sent there? What was going on with Keaton Thomas and not being in there on so many drives? Well, we get an answer for that. Maybe they just wanted to give him like 10 tackles, 15 tackles last week, or 16 tackles last week. Maybe that's something. We're going to limit his snaps through the rest of non-conference, but still question marks. There's going to be question marks. Undoubtedly, we knew going into the season there's question marks about the defense, and while I'm not thrilled by this defensive performance, because obviously a lot to be desired, I think we learned a little bit about this defense and what they're doing, what they potentially can do in the run game. I think SMU's run game is going to be solid, not as good as it was last year, kind of running back by committee. Baylor's playing peso a lot, light in the box in terms of weight by their players, but I thought they were athletic. Excited to see how that progresses and what Dave Aranda does there. And then can they get Jackie Marshall back full-time? Can they get DK Khalud, who was limited in the second half, back for more time? They're dropping like flies right there right now. And that's why this week, it's not a bye week, but this is a big week to get healthy there and just hope that they can come back, because they're really thin on the defensive line. But you saw it again. You saw some flashes. You saw that aggressiveness from the linebacker level, and they made big plays late. So you hope they can build on that. But obviously big question marks as we progress throughout the season, and how do they stop the run while also defending the pass is going to be a challenge. The good news is they kind of have that. They do have that offense that is fully capable of carrying them through stretches. If the defense can get turnovers, if the defense can get important stops, if special teams can come up with a big play for the offense, there are ways to win for this team, because the offense is so good that, maybe we're looking at 48-45 type games throughout this season. But at this point, it doesn't matter. Go out and win football games. Figure out how to win football games and coach to win football games. Don't coach to be perfect. You might have to sacrifice something, but Dave Aranda needs to take this team and not coach to be perfect, not coach to, run your best scheme, coach to win games. And I think if they can do that while still limiting their deficiencies, this team could end up, maybe they sneak in and win 9 games. I think the offense is good enough to do that if the defense can show progress. So that's it. That's all I have for today. Incredible victory, and not incredible from it was just perfect all the way around, but 48-45, double overtime, game-winning field goal in double overtime after getting Kevin Jennings off the field. They missed the field goal, so you're able to win it on a field goal. A lot of offensive fireworks, defensive breakdowns, both sides of the ball, or both sides of the sideline. SMU had plenty of breakdowns, but Baylor methodically just picked their defense apart and wore them down, and that was the reason that 14-point comeback was possible. So really excited to see the team move forward. Obviously a breath of fresh air after last week in the beginning of this game for this to actually be a win. And there's no, unless you're winning this game 48-0, 48-10, it doesn't matter what the score is. It doesn't tell us anything other than Baylor won this game, and we know what their deficiencies are, and they have to get better. So, all right, Baylor fans, appreciate you tuning into this Rapid Reactions podcast. Look forward to talking to you again in the future. Be on the lookout for Grayson and I both alternating on these depending on the game. And I'm really excited to discuss this game and the forthcoming games with all of you the rest of the season. Sick 'em Bears.